So the other day during a press conference, Kirby Smart essentially gave away the keys as to the reason why Georgia wins so much. And he was talking very specifically about a guy that I saw play, I think it was 5 times or 6 times this winter or this fall. And we thought we were watching Dylan Raiola play a bunch of football getting ready for Georgia, but it was KJ Bolden. And KJ popped quite a bit in that time. He was playing safety, DB, or whatever, and then some receiver as well. And I remember going up to Charlotte and watching Buford play and really struggle on the offensive line, have a hard time getting going. And the one play that got them going was Raiola to KJ Bolden for a touchdown. Bolden just flashes and pops. And at the time, he was committed to Florida State. This was in early September. And as you recall, Georgia lost Raiola, gained Bolden within a matter of not long, however many days it was. It was not an extended period of time. It was what Kirby said to KJ Bolden. Let me back up just a little bit further here. In the summer, it was like late July. I'm trying to remember exactly when it was. It might have been early August. It was late July. It was after media days, but before the season. KJ Bolden was on the precipice of picking Georgia in the summer. That did not happen. For whatever reason, picks Florida State. And the story goes from Kirby. He said, I told him from the day he committed, talking about Florida State, to the day that he came to us, we are not going to stop recruiting him because we think he is a great kid from a great family and a really, really good football player. That is why. It's very simple. That's why Georgia wins. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to read the whole quote here from Kirby. But if you're not getting the kids to develop, then you're not going to win. So Georgia has a really good coaching staff. They do. They're good. They're experts at their field. They are exceptionally good. But the coaching staff there's only one person left. I think Glenn Schumann. That's the only person that remains from 2016. That's the only person that remains from that might be the only person that remains from both national championships. I'd have to go back and look. But everybody else is left. Dan Lanning, Todd Hartley was with both national championships. So you get my point. The coaching staff is turned over. Todd Monken left. Here comes Mike Bobo. Del McGee is gone now. So it's the coaches. They're really good, but it's getting the players. Here's what he had to say. He says, the expectation of the outside world is that young guys are going to set the world on fire. But we have good football players here. They're going to compete with guys who they're going to compete with those guys and hopefully learn some ability to play and playing time. He's talking right now about Ellis Robinson and KJ Bolden, both 5-star defensive backs that have come in and fighting their way. I mean, they're going to play this fall. The question is how much. Here's what Kirby goes on to say this. He says, as far as KJ's recruitment, I don't see kids as committed to other places because they're not signed. Now, this is probably every college football coach. And that last statement, I don't see kids as committed to other places because they're not signed. Rodney Gardner, who you may or may not remember from his years at Georgia, said privately and publicly, once kids commit, the recruiting game becomes harder because then everybody really jumps in and tries to get guys. And I think Coach G's right about that, to be honest with you. Anyway, back to what Kirby's having to say. How to get back to the screen. He says, I just know that we recruit good football players. We evaluate every player the same, whether they're committed or not. If there's interest and conversation from them, and there's visits where they come to your campus, you just stay very consistent. Here's the key part. We were consistent with KJ. The recruitment never stopped. I told him from the day that he committed to the day that he came to us, we're not going to stop recruiting you. And we're not going to stop recruiting him because we think he's a great kid from a great family and a really great football player. So, I mean, I've got some insight into the situation at Buford. people they are really they like the Bolden family, the people that are raising KJ, and uh, nobody ever that behind the scenes had much bad to say about KJ Bolden from the Buford perspective. Their worry about Dylan Raiola was always that, hey, this guy came in, he's gonna leave. You know, how's he going to deal with pressure? How's he going to like pressure on the field, pressure off the field? There was always some skepticism about Raiola's, you know, this sounds bad, about his toughness. I think he showed a fair amount of toughness having to deal with that offensive line at Buford, but it gave me I couldn't tell everything from the guy from when I saw him play because he was never getting fully protected, which was a problem. Bolden, on the other hand, flashed a lot. Now, Raiola did too, but Bolden, when he flashed, you couldn't miss it because you weren't watching him every single play. And let me just say this real quick. We got a new order of double dogs in. Pick these up today. I've got in limited order our friends at Red Zone, which you can see they are down there and up there, wherever it is. I can never, when you're the weatherman, it's very hard. Right down there, our friends at Red Zone, Scott and Minnie, make sure they'll have double dogs in on today. It's Friday. So pick those up. I don't know what time they'll have them in, but they'll have a fair amount in. Get them before, we'll probably run out by G-Day, which is not that long away. So get them now. It's an awesome graduation gift. It is one of a kind, and there's stuff in here that you can't read anywhere else, like the story from Ohio State. That's the Peach Bowl game. That is still not online, and I don't think it will be. Get that today. The link's down below. When we went to go, Ryan and I went sometimes. Matt and I went sometimes, but I saw Buford a lot by myself, and Bolden was a guy that flashed all. I'm trying to think of a game where he did not flash. When I was in Charlotte, he flashed. The game where they lost against Grayson, he did. Obviously the first couple games of the season, he did. He just made a lot of plays. And getting back to the point, it cannot be shocking that he went to Georgia. And people say, "Oh, well, it was an NIL thing," and I mean, yeah. Because everything's an NIL thing. But in order to have the opportunity to talk to someone about an NIL deal, to talk to someone about how your life can be better at, Georgia or Alabama or Florida, you have to have a relationship with those kids. Georgia had a relationship with KJ Bolden, and it never went away. That's the important part. Otis, I'm going to tell this, Otis Reese. I was very surprised that Georgia signed him out of South Georgia in the 18. Yes, it was the 18 class because I was in Fort Lauderdale with Tyson Campbell the day he signed. That was surprising to me. And I talked with somebody inside the program that later that night, just as I was about to get on the plane to get back. They were not surprised. They said, "Oh, well, because Otis Reese didn't talk a lot during the recruiting process. That was a slightly different time in the recruiting game. Things changed after COVID. But Georgia always had a relationship there, and they weren't surprised. They were not surprised. It surprised kind of the recruiting world, I think, or it wasn't so obvious, I guess you could say. But when he picked Georgia, the folks at Georgia were like, well, so that's why with Bolden, you could start seeing it shifting late. And I thought it was not going to be Florida State, but I wasn't so sure it would be Georgia. If you go back and watch, I wasn't so sure. I was like, he's not signing with Florida State, so where is he going? And I thought it was very possible it could be Auburn, but it turned out to be Georgia. And I think, in that situation, the relationship never really changed. From what I recall off the top of my head, the mother was and she can sort of speak for herself, but as I understood it, the mother was Kirby was her favorite coach, but that didn't stop her son from picking Florida State at the beginning. Whether or not that was the reason he picked Georgia in the end, I'm sure it was a reason. I don't think it was the only reason, but my global point here is exactly what I'm trying to say. Georgia is doing a great job of having relationships. This is why Kirby was so good at Alabama and recruiting in the state. He had relationships and he didn't lose them. He didn't lose them. They are where they separate themselves as a program to me is recruiting. Is the work that they're doing with the recruiting. The other stuff, they're really good at that. I don't want to underscore like Sinclair does, or how they get coached, or the nutrition, or a lot of the programmatic stuff. That's really elite at Georgia, and the university, the institution has really put as much effort into that as anybody else in the country. It's better than anybody else. But what separates them, in my mind, is the recruiting part of it. And if DeBoer at Alabama does not get that going in a major way, they will not compete with Georgia. They will not. They will beat them occasionally, but this is what happens. You look at Florida, they're not recruiting at the level of Georgia. It's killing them. It just is. And, you know, the teams that lately have played for or won a national championship have recruited at elite levels, or in the case of LSU and perhaps Clemson, but the 18 Clemson team was loaded. They have had superstar quarterbacks. And, you know, this past season, JJ McCarthy, I would not define as a superstar quarterback in the college game. Now, I don't know what he's going to do in the NFL, but no, he would not be my first choice. He would not. He would be in the quarterbacks that played in the Final Four. He would be probably. I would definitely take the UW quarterback, and he would be not number one, and he would not be number four, but he would not be number one. And you could get into a real fight about if you'd rather have Penix or, you know, the Texas quarterback. I don't think so. I think they did more for their teams than JJ McCarthy did. But I'm getting off on a tangent here. But if you don't have the base of guys, you're not winning the national championship. You're just not. And, you know, we've seen that. You know, Michigan, they had the base. They did. And you'll see that in the draft here in a little bit. They had the base of recruiting. They recruited really well from like 18 on. Georgia, I mean, from really 16 on, Georgia's been, well, I'd say the 17 class really more than anything. But 16 wasn't bad. But the 17 class with, you know, Fromm and all of them, that was a great class. And then you follow that up with Fields, Zamir, you know, James Cook. That was a great class. And then right after that was, you know, Trayvon Walker. The season after, the year after that, Jalen Carter and Brock Bowers and, you know, Darnell. And they're just racking people up. And I mean, what I'm going to say is Darnell, I think Darnell, Keeley, and Jalen were all in the same class in 2000. Then you had Bowers with Lassiter. This is Bowers, I mean, it's just player after player. And the reason why is these stories with KJ Bolden. I mean, that's why they're winning, y'all. That's what it is.